Welcome back to Learn with Matham. Hello everyone. Welcome to my channel. In today's video, we're going to break down the concept of authentication protocols. Whether you're a beginner or an expert, we've got something for you. We will be releasing 2 videos on authentication protocols. In the first video, we'll explore the PAP or Password Authentication Protocol and CHAP or Challenge Handshake Authentication Protocol. And at the end of Part 1, we will take a deep dive into Kerberos Authentication, which is used by Microsoft for Active Directory authentication. Before we start talking about authentication protocols, it's better to understand the meaning of authentication. Authentication is the process or action of proving or showing something to be true, genuine, or valid. In computer science, authentication is the process of verifying the identity of a user, process, or device, often as a prerequisite to allowing access to resources in an information system. There are various authentication protocols in use today with their strengths and weaknesses. Authentication may never keep your information perfectly secure, but it can make hackers harder to accomplish. Let's explore some of the most common authentication protocols. One of the first authentication protocols we want to talk about is point-to-point protocols, or PPP. Point-to-point protocols typically offer several authentication methods like PP, CHAP, EAP, and Radius. Beyond point-to-point protocols, there are various other authentication methods and protocols used in network security. For example, Public Key Infrastructure, Open Authorization, OpenID Connect, Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, Kerberos, Security Assertion Markup Language, and many others. All these protocols and methods offer different mechanisms to authenticate users or devices connecting to a network or accessing resources, ensuring secure and authorized access. Now, let's check the PAP authentication. PAP, which is one of the oldest authentication protocols. It's easy to implement and a simple authentication method. It's used only at the initial link establishment phase, where the client uses a two-way handshake to establish its identity to the server. It's a password-based, client-server authentication protocol. In the handshake, an ID and password pair is sent to the server as plain text, and the server matches the ID-password pair. When it comes to modern networks, PAP is not the most secure option out there. It's like leaving the front door to your digital world wide open. The problem is, PAP is pretty vulnerable to those sneaky man-in-the-middle attacks, where someone could potentially intercept your login credentials. That's why it's considered outdated and deprecated in most cases. For the sake of your online security, it's best to use PAP only when you've exhausted all other options and there's really no other choice. Let's keep those digital doors locked, shall we? PAP has its vulnerabilities, and some of these can be quite easy to exploit. With eavesdropping, imagine a sneaky hacker quietly tuning into the conversation between your device and the server. They can easily capture the data being sent, and, if it's not encrypted, which is the case with PAP, they get their hands on your username and password without breaking a sweat. Man-in-the-middle attack. This one's a bit like a party crasher at your communication party. The hacker inserts themselves right in the middle of the conversation between you and the server. They can eavesdrop on your chat or, in some cases, even start messing with your messages. As I mentioned, PAP uses a two-step process for authentication. The client sends its credentials to the server, and if they match, access is granted. Now, CHAP, or Challenge Handshake Authentication Protocol, takes things up a notch with a 3-step process. This extra step makes it more secure compared to PAP because it adds an extra layer of protection for user credentials. The reason CHAP was created in the first place was to fix some security issues in PAP, especially when it comes to point-to-point authentication. Now, let's dive into the Kerberos Authentication Protocol. Kerberos is a robust network authentication protocol designed to provide strong authentication for client-server applications by utilizing secret key cryptography. This cryptographic approach, combined with third-party ticket authorization, makes Kerberos a highly secure authentication method. MIT developed this protocol as part of the Athena project. The protocol derives its name from Cerberus, the three-headed dog of Hades in Greek mythology. This choice of name reflects the core components that the Kerberos protocol embodies. The first component is client. The client is the entity, user, or service that seeks authentication and access to network resources. The second component is network resource or application server. The service represents the network resource or application that a client wishes to access. And finally, the KDC or Key Distribution Center. The KDC is a centralized authentication server responsible for issuing tickets and verifying the identities of clients and services and typically comprises three main components. First up, we have the Authentication Server, or AS. The AS is responsible for the initial stage of authentication. When a client wants to access a network service, it sends a request to the AS. And AS validates the client's identity and issues a ticket-granting ticket, TGT. Next is the Ticket-Granting Server, or TGS. The TGS handles the second stage of authentication, is responsible for granting service tickets to clients. When a client needs to access a specific network service, it forwards the TGD to the TGS. The TGS verifies the TGT's authenticity, and if valid, it generates a service ticket that allows access to the requested service. And finally, we've got the database of principals, database that stores user and service principal information, including their secret keys or password hashes. The database helps the AS and TGS verify client and service identities during authentication. Now, let's talk about the steps that Kerberos will take. Kerberos completes 6 steps to establish secure connections. The protocol flow begins when the client makes a request for a ticket-granting ticket, TGT, from the authentication server. The TGT request includes the following information. Client identifier. This identifies the client or user requesting the TGT. Network address. The IP address of the client. Timestamp. The time when the TGT request is made. Lifetime. The desired duration for which the TGT should be valid. Authenticator. This is a piece of information generated by the client to prove its identity. The authenticator is encrypted using the client's secret key. This information is encrypted using the user's password hash. So, in the next step, the KDC uses the security identifier, SID, to check if the client exists in the database. If everything goes smoothly, we have a successful authentication. This means the KDC has successfully decrypted the TGT request while ensuring the timestamp falls within the KDC's configured time window. Now, what happens next? Well, that's where the authentication server comes into play and will generate a special ticket, known as the ticket-granting ticket, TGT. The TGT is encrypted with the TGS's secret key. Now maybe you asking yourself what TGT contains? Let's take a closer look at what's inside a TGT. The TGT contains the following. Client identifier. This identifies the client or user requesting the TGT. Network address. It's the IP address of the client. Timestamp. This records the time when the TGT was issued. Lifetime. It specifies how long the TGT remains valid. Session key, SK1. This is a secret key that the client will use to request additional service tickets from the ticket-granting server, TGS, and establish secure communication with network services. The KDC sends the TGT and a TGS session key back to the client. Note: before moving on to the next step, let's talk a bit about session keys and secret keys. There are several secret keys involved, each serving a specific purpose to enhance security. Here are the primary secret keys and their purposes. Client secret key. This key is unique to each client user. Authenticate the client to the authentication server. Protect the authenticity of the client's communication with the TGS. TGD secret key. This key is known only to the TGS. It's used for decrypting TGTs and granting service tickets. Application server secret key. Each application server has its own secret key, which is known only to that application server. This key is used to decrypt service tickets and establish secure communication between the client and the application server. Session keys. Session keys are temporary keys generated for each specific session between the client and the TGS or between the client and the service server. They are used to encrypt and decrypt messages exchanged during the session, ensuring confidentiality and integrity. Authentication protocol may employ multiple session keys, depending on the complexity of the authentication and the number of services that the client needs. At the very least, we have two session keys. Session Key 1. SK1 is used between the client and the ticket granting server, TGS, to request service tickets. SK1 employed for secure communication with the TGS. Session Key 2, SK2 is utilized between the client and the application server after the client has obtained a ticket from the TGS. SK2 is specific to the client and the application server. After receiving the TGT, the client first securely stores the TGT for later use, and then decrypts the message by using the client hash or secret key to extract the TGT and SK1, and third, generates the authenticator which will be used for the TGS request. Now you should ask yourself, why does the client need to make a TGS request? Well, when the client wishes to access a specific network service, it initiates a service request to the TGS. Let's take a closer look at TGS's request to see what it includes. Ticket Granting Ticket, TGT. Service Principal Name, SPN. The TGS request specifies the name of the network service the client wishes to access. The SPN uniquely identifies the service. It is crucial for the TGS to determine which service's secret key should be used to encrypt the service ticket. Authenticator. The client creates an authenticator, which serves as proof of the authenticity and freshness of the request. The authenticator typically includes timestamp, a timestamp indicating the current time to ensure the freshness of the request and prevent replay attacks. Client's identity. The client's identity, which is included to verify the request is coming from the legitimate client. Session key, SK1. The authenticator is encrypted using a session key, SK1, shared between the client and the TGS. This ensures the authenticity and integrity of the request. In summary, the TGS request includes the TGT to verify the client's identity, the SPN to specify the target service, and an authenticator to ensure the request's authenticity and freshness. The TGS uses this information to issue a service ticket, which allows the client to securely access the requested service. We've now reached Step 4, where the KDC issues a service ticket for the client to utilize with the application server. In the upcoming steps, we'll explore how the client will employ this ticket. However, at this point, here's what happens. The TGS decrypts the TGT using its secret key to verify its authenticity. The TGS checks if the TGT is still valid by examining the timestamp and confirming the client's identity. If the TGT is valid and the service request is legitimate, the TGS generates a service ticket for the requested service. The TGS generates a new random session key, SK2, for the client-service server interaction and includes it in the service ticket. The service ticket is encrypted with the secret key of the requested service, ensuring that only the service can decrypt it. The service ticket also contains the client's identity, the SPN of the service, and a timestamp. After obtaining the service ticket from the ticket granting server, the user sends a request to the desired application server. The server or service, upon receiving the service ticket, performs validation checks to verify the user's identity and authorization to access the service. There's a point that you should consider. As we said, the KDC is primarily involved in the initial authentication process, where it issues the TGT and the subsequent service ticket. Once the user has obtained the service ticket, they can directly communicate with the target service. And finally, the application server will grant access to the client and establish a secure session. Let's see how this step will work. Once the service ticket is confirmed as valid and the service verifies the user's identity, access is authorized. This signifies that the user is officially permitted to utilize the services offered by the service. With access granted, the service and the user can establish a secure communication session using the session key. This involves encrypting the data transmitted between the user and the service to protect it from eavesdropping and tampering. We've reached the end of our video about Kerberos. I hope you found it helpful and interesting. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. By subscribing, you'll stay updated and won't miss out on our upcoming videos covering various authentication protocols. Also, remember to click the notification bell so you'll be the first to know when our new content goes live. Feel free to leave comments about what you'd like to see next or any questions you might have. Thanks for being part of our community. Until next time, take care and see you in our next video.